The reason why I have Georgia and Oregon in my national championship is for a couple of different reasons. Number one, Oregon, I think, has the clear path and the easiest path to have the momentum to make a national championship. Here are my full college football playoff predictions from start to finish. We're not just doing round one. We've already talked about round one, and obviously you'll see what those predictions are, but we're going to take it a step further, and then another step, and then another step. We're doing the full college football playoff predictions. And frankly, right here, it's the script. It got shipped to me. I understand there's not a commissioner in college football. Frankly, I don't know who's leading it in the NCAA office, but they sent me the script and I got it right here. So I'm going to plagiarize it and say it's my predictions. Number one, Oregon and JMU. Between the two group of five matchups, this is the one that I feel like has the highest blowout potential. All respect to JMU, but the way that they are going to have to be competitive in this game is a very difficult path, especially at night in Autzen Stadium with an Oregon team that is going to be very much well rested, with starters returning. It sounds like Evan Stewart's practicing. All these wide receivers are going to return. I think it's going to be a situation where Oregon, it's just a damn bloodbath. And we'll talk about Oregon for future rounds. The next one, Ole Miss and Tulane. This is the one that I feel, at least Oregon and JMU, I can just point to the fact that they've never played each other. And I could say that the talent roster is going to be a sizable gap. Ole Miss and Tulane have played each other, and we've seen that result. And I think a lot of people are taking that result and holding on to it and saying, well, it's just going to happen again. And frankly, I look a little bit further. When talking about Ole Miss and how far they can go into the college football playoff, the number one question you ask yourself is, are the distractions more tangible in how the result on the field is going to look like? Or is this going to be a situation where the distractions actually band the group together? Because it can only be one of two options. They play worse because of all the noise around Lane Kiffin, or maybe they band together and really buy into Pete Golding early into his tenure, and you get some of the best version of Ole Miss football yet. And this is a team that, with the offensive capabilities and the defensive players that they have, could find themselves in a semifinal against maybe an Ohio State, playing for a potential national championship opportunity. But if they do allow the distractions seep in, maybe a couple players have one foot out the door looking to go to Baton Rouge, could you see the worst version of Ole Miss football? Whereas Tulane is a team that is going to be very much well coached. Jake Retzlaff is a guy that can create nothing out of thin air. Something out of thin air. Retzlaff is a dynamic quarterback. This is a team that is going to be able to not shoot themselves in the foot, getting another opportunity against a roster that they've already had an experience facing off against. I'm not going to pick Tulane in this spot. I'm picking Ole Miss, but this definitely could be a situation where we see the most competitive matchup between the two in terms of comparing the two group of five matchups in the first round. Oklahoma and Alabama is another rematch that we saw in the regular season. Oklahoma has had two of the last two matchups, looking to hit for three straight. We've already done a full breakdown and preview of it, but to give you a high-level overview of what this matchup looks like, I'm looking at special teams, man. I'm looking at an offense on both sides of the ball that is going to struggle with two really good defenses. You're going to get an uptick in performance from Alabama. Of course, we just came off of their worst performance of the year. And Oklahoma and their Sooner Magic continue to find ways to win regardless of what the box score says. And I think if it's going to be an ugly, low-scoring game, the difference of this game could truly come down to whether or not Oklahoma goes 4 for 4 on some field goals. Maybe it's a 50-plus yarder. Maybe it's just hitting 4 straight 40-plus yard field goals, whereas the Alabama kicking unit barely gets across the 50-yard line, and they don't feel comfortable kicking a field goal, so they have to go for it on fourth down, giving good field position to Oklahoma, or maybe they miss a kick here or there. I think that's going to be the difference between two very close programs. It's going to be Norman. It's going to be at night. I'm picking Sooner Magic, and I'm trusting them to continue what they've been able to do all year, which is finding ways to win. We go to we go to Miami and Texas A&M in College Station, 11 a.m. kick. This stadium's going to be rocking. This is going to be an incredible matchup. This is the two talent rosters that are at eye level. This is the most competitive game, in my opinion, between all of the first round matchups, I'm picking Texas A&M for one simple reason. Actually, three. Number one, you are going to be able to get to Carson Beck. This is one of the best pressure units in the entire country. We've seen in the two losses that Miami's had this season. Number one, Louisville, great pressure unit. They were at the time, I believe, number one in FBS in terms of getting to the quarterback. Then we go to SMU, terrible secondary, great at getting to the quarterback. We saw what happened. Now you have a Texas A&M defense that plays their best football at home, great at getting to the quarterback, and a better secondary. And you give a ton of time to Mike Elko and this team and this roster to get healthier. The second reason, Le'Veon Moss will be returning for Texas A&M. Now, it's not going to be in the full capacity of 20-plus carries, 250 yards type of rushing performance for a guy that has not played in over 6 weeks. But what I do expect is those 10 to 15 carries to be vital to an offense that can be quite inconsistent. I think a guy like Le'Veon Moss, who is a free 3.5 yards every single time, is going to be so crucial to get the schedule back on track, to be able to keep the train moving forward. And that's why I'm picking Texas A&M plus the home field advantage. We go to the second round. The second round is going to be Oregon versus Texas Tech. This will be the first time that Texas Tech will be facing a roster that is going to be at eye level with them. And I think that's going to be incredibly important in terms of predicting this game. Now, Oregon, we could see them losing to James Madison for all we know. But at the end of the day, this is the most likely matchup. And I will be very curious, how is Baron Morton going to manage a pretty good front seven for Oregon that is going to potentially overwhelm an offensive line that has not had to face this type of talent roster in a very long time, if ever, for the entire 2025 season? How does Baron Morton manage that pocket, as he's a great game manager, but he's not a guy that can be quite mobile and move around? I'll be curious on the health of these wide receivers for Oregon, as we will really get to see what that secondary looks like for Texas Tech. Now, we know about their front seven. We know about David Bailey, their linebackers, but what is this offense going to look like with Will Stein, who is already 1 foot out the door, and he's going to be a guy that is already focusing on Kentucky, their defense coordinator, in the same spot with Cal? What are we going to see with these offensive and defensive coordinators to manipulate this Texas Tech defense that had been so good all year? There's a lot of questions to be had in this game. I think of it like this. When you're a team that has been able to play the Big 12 rosters all year, I have so much respect for Texas Tech. I really do. Pardon me. I believe that when Texas Tech finally meets a roster at their level, it's going to be invaluable for the young players that are going to be playing in 2026, 2027 to get that experience. But I do expect Oregon to have the momentum at the first round. If Texas Tech had at least gotten to the first round and then had that tune-up game, I think it's going to be a lot to ask out of a Texas Tech team to not only play a talent roster at their level for the first time all year, but to also have a large amount of time in between playing their last game in the Big 12 championship to this one, whereas you have an Oregon team that is going to have momentum. They're going to get into the routine of playing football every single weekend once again. I'm trusting Oregon to find a way to win in that spot. The next matchup we have, Ole Miss and Georgia, another rematch for Ole Miss. Looks like Ole Miss is going to have back-to-back rematches in the first and second round of the college football playoff, as long as they get the job done against Tulane. And I'm expecting the same result. If I had Lane Kiffin on this staff, an offensive mind, an offensive genius, some would say, to get another crack at the Kirby Smart-led defense that has been playing some of their best football, I would feel so much better about that. I understand they have their OC, they have Pete Golding, all these different things, but I just think the trajectory of Georgia is continuing to rise, whereas Ole Miss, if I'm projecting them to play a hair under their standard, how am I going to expect them to be able to launch themselves to play their best version yet against a Bulldogs team that I think could go win the national championship? If you're reading the title, I think they end up winning the national championship. Then we get Oklahoma and Indiana. Now, as someone that is following the NFL draft, I want this matchup really bad. I want to see what Fernando Mendoza looks like against a Brent Venables defense that's playing some of their best football, our Mason Thomas, obviously all the playmakers in the secondary. I would be so curious on how that would look, but I would pick Indiana to win comfortably. Indiana is a more consistent offense. They have a damn good defense that I think would destroy the Oklahoma offensive line. And this is one of those cases where I have no faith that Oklahoma could put up more than maybe 14 points. Whether it's John Mateer's hand injury, whether it's the fact that they just don't have a good offensive system, maybe it's the wide receivers, maybe it's the fact that their offensive line can block. There's too many issues on the offensive side of the ball. And if you become one-dimensional against that Indiana front seven that is very damn good, that gave problems to Ohio State, how can I confidently just rely on Sooner Magic to not only pull off a big win against Alabama that I don't feel confident in, but to win multiple games in this college football playoff? You have to look for consistency, and they don't have that. Then we go to Texas A&M versus Ohio State. Now, Texas A&M has the ceiling of a national champion, but very much like Oklahoma, do they have the consistency of a national championship? And do they have the consistency to win a national championship? That's where I question A&M a lot, where we look at some of the problems that they would have more than likely against Miami is the consistency of having quality drive after quality drive, keeping yourself in striking distance as well. You don't have a good special teams unit as of right now. I would argue outside of the group of 5 teams and maybe even some of the group of 5 teams, their kicking unit for Texas A&M could be one of the worst. And if that's a situation where you're facing a talent roster like Ohio State, where you need to be able to put points on the board, you need to be able to put yourself in striking distance, and you're leaving points up in the air, that's how you lose football games. I think the Texas game is a great example of that. And I think Ohio State, their talent roster would overwhelm an A&M team that I think is damn good, but I think guys like Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese are perfect players to be able to contain a guy like Marcel Reed. We saw what they were able to do with Damon Williams, a very similar archetype in Washington. I think we would get a very similar result, so I would pick Ohio State to win. In the semifinals, we would have Georgia versus Ohio State, Oregon versus Indiana. Let's talk about Georgia and Ohio State. I think my logic and why I would pick Georgia in this spot is solely for the spot that, or solely for the reason that I think if this was a fight in a telephone booth, I'm picking Georgia. We've seen Ohio State when they've had to face a talent roster at the same caliber and level as themselves. The offense takes a major step back. And I have questions about Brian Hartline. I have questions about their offensive identity as they're still trying to figure it out with all these young players on this roster, that it's a perfect opportunity for a Kirby Smart to exploit some of the areas. Maybe it's the fact that they can't consistently run the ball. Maybe it's the fact that I think Kirby Smart and what they're able to do on the offensive side of the ball maybe exploit some of the run fits that they've had problems with over the past couple of weeks in Ohio State. And I think if it becomes a physical rock fight, I'm trusting Georgia to win in that spot. So I'm picking Georgia to go to the national championship. Then we have another rematch, which is Oregon and Indiana. We've seen this before. Indiana walks into Autzen Stadium. They find a way to win. Not only they find a way to win, they do it in dominant fashion. This is an incredible matchup. I'm picking Oregon, though, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's really difficult to beat a team twice. We all understand this, and I really do believe the momentum that Oregon will have from the first round, the experience of when do we play our best football. That's the biggest lesson that Dan Lanning got from last year. They played their best football in the regular season. They got to the first or the second round of the college football playoff and laid a goose egg against Ohio State, who was playing their best football when they needed to. Oregon more than likely has been setting up for this moment to ramp up and go win some damn football games in the playoff. And I'm picking Oregon to win. And I do think this is a spot where maybe a couple of injuries here or there, or just overall, no one's healthy in the college football playoff. No one's 100%. That we could see some of the talent deficiencies that Indiana has, as they are projected to be like the lowest blue chip ratio for a number one seed. If they were to win the national championship, they would break the blue chip ratio and the thought process and the ideology that you have to have a certain talent roster in terms of 4 or 5 star makeup to win a national championship, which would be incredible, but I'm not going to project it. I have Oregon and Georgia in the national championship. The reason why I have Georgia and Oregon in my national championship is for a couple of different reasons. Number one, Oregon, I think, has the clear path and the easiest path to have the momentum to make a national championship. You get JMU, a tune-up game. Your starters more than likely are not going to play in the second half. Out of the top 4 seeds, you get Texas Tech. I'll love the Texas Tech. They're an incredible story. They can beat Oregon, but like I've talked about, they are going to be facing a talent roster of their same caliber for the first time all season. Then you more than likely between Ohio State and Indiana. All respect to Indiana, who did beat Ohio State. I guarantee you, if you ask Dan Lanning, who would you rather face in terms of talent rosters and preparing for, he would much rather face off against Indiana a second time. And then you're in the national championship. Let's turn the page to Georgia. Why do I feel confident that Georgia can go to the national championship? Well, number one, they are more than likely going to get a rematch against an Ole Miss team that just lost their coach. And you have Kirby Smart, the best coach in all of college football, and he has his offensive and defensive coordinators, which over half the playoff field is either missing one or all of them for their entire college football playoff staff. And we've talked about it all year. There's not a team that is perfect. There's not a 2019 LSU. There's not a 2020 Alabama here. Every single team has flaws. So I would more than likely want to bet on the guy that could exploit flaws at the highest capability in Kirby Smart. It's what he does. There is a reason why we call him the best coach in college football. There is a reason why we fully believe that Georgia can make a run any single year that he is the head football coach of this program. He has this team believing that they're underdogs. And I think this is exactly where Georgia wants to be in terms of playing their best football. We continuously see them ramp up and play at a higher level every single week. They weren't getting to the quarterback to start the year. Guess what? Now they're getting to the quarterback. The offense was a little one-dimensional to start the year. Now it's multi-dimensional. They can run the ball on you. They can pass the ball. They can beat you in a rock fight. They can beat you in a shootout. They can beat you in any which way that you want. You pick the poison, because at the end of the day, they could be raising the trophy at the end of this. And I feel really confident if it's a matchup between Georgia and Oregon, a team that doesn't have their offensive coordinator, that doesn't have their defensive coordinator, against a young quarterback, I'm fully picking Georgia to win the national championship. I've put my hard-earned U.S. currency. This is not betting advice, but I've put U.S. currency that I believe that Georgia has the best path to make to the national championship. And if they get there, I feel pretty damn confident in a team that has the makeup that Georgia does with Kirby Smart and all the different pieces. Gunnar Stockton playing ball control football. You have a litany of running backs that can go make plays at any given moment. They have all the different pieces on this roster. Sure, is it a 2022 type defense? No, it's not. But it doesn't have to be, because guess what? The field isn't demanding that you need a 2022 defense. What the field is demanding from you is you have high-level coaches that can exploit the flaws with your peers. And I have complete faith that you have the offensive and defensive coaching staff that continues to push this team forward with Kirby Smart. Hell yeah, I'm picking Georgia to win.